Welcome. I'm Barbara Markham, the Director of the Senior Resources Department for the City of Westland. With me today is Gary Allen, who is an attorney at law, an estate planner, and also an elder law attorney. So you kind of cover the spectrum as far as my audience goes, but it's never too early, and I tell people this, never too early to have a plan.
Absolutely.
What we're going to talk a little bit about is probate, because when everybody talks about making a plan, avoiding probate is one of the reasons they want to do this. The interesting thing is probate has such a bad name, and we're going to talk a little bit about why that is. What is probate?
Well, probate is a court process. So automatically you're going to be involved with attorneys, and you're going to be involved with, in some cases, having to travel to the probate court, in this case in Wayne County. And you're going to be involved with fees, because all courts need fees to run on. And you're going to be involved with timelines, because there's statutes that build in timelines. And the timelines, in some cases, are built to protect creditors so that they have time to file their claims. And so there are extended timelines. Probate's also public. You know, when you go in through probate, you have to have an inventory of all your assets. And so if you have a nosy neighbor who wants to know when you died what you're worth, they can go down and they can look at the file and they can look to see what you had, what your assets were and who you're distributing them to. And so for people who have a child out of wedlock, or they're disinheriting a child, that all becomes very much public because it's all public record. And so there's a lot of reasons to avoid probate, because it's expensive, it takes a lot of time, delays, and it's a public procedure. And so in most cases, it's a good idea to try to avoid probate.
Those things I had no idea about, interestingly enough. Okay, so what does the probate court do, and why does it, you said for one reason, the creditors, to make sure that all your bills are paid. Yeah. What else does the probate court do? Okay.
Well, outside of what we're talking about, the probate has the responsibility, probate judge has responsibility of appointing guardians and conservators. But we're limiting today talking about when you die, so doing the estates.
That'll be another show.
Yeah, okay. And so the job of the probate court is to see that your assets are distributed to the right people. And one of the biggest misconceptions I have, clients come and see me and they'll say, Gary, don't worry, I'm not going to probate court because I have a will. Well, that's wrong. It's 180 degrees wrong, okay? And here's how I tell them to remember this. A will is your letter to the probate judge. Dear judge, when I die, here's who I want you to give my property to. And here's the person I want to be the executor of my estate, also called a personal representative. So that's the main thing a will does, is tell the judge who you want to have appointed as your executor or personal representative and who you want your property to go to. And then it's the job of the judge to see that happens.
How much power does this person have, the executor of your estate?
Well, they have a lot of power. And for example, if you have a house in probate that needs to be sold, that personal representative or executor is going to be the one who decides, who do I list this with and at what price? And when I get an offer, do I accept it or do I counter it? And if to get the house ready to sell, are we going to fix the roof or not? Or we sell it as is? And so that is a lot of power. And there's not always agreement with what that person does, because in any family, if you've got multiple children, you usually have different economics involved. And so one child wants a quick sale because they want their money right away because they need it for some reason. And another child doesn't need the money, and he says, oh, let's wait 2 years and we'll get a better price. And so if they're partners in the house, after mom or dad dies, you have all those decisions to be made, but the personal representative actually can make those decisions.
With or without the agreement of the others?
Right.
That's interesting. Does that cause ever problems in a family?
Yeah, it does. Yeah, that's one of the things that can cause problems. And I recently had a case, I got a telephone call from a boy I went to high school with, and he said, help me. My mom died 3 years ago. My brother's the personal representative, and he's refusing to sell the house, which was supposed to be sold and divided up among all the kids. Instead, he's let my sister move in. She's unemployed, so he's using funds
that belong to all of them.
That belong to all of us to pay the taxes and insurance on the house, and she's living there tax-free. And he said, I'm all for helping my sister, but after 3 years, I think it's time, she find a job or get some help or something, and let's sell the house, and what can I do to get my money?
What could he do?
Yeah, well, in that case, you can go to the court, and you can petition the court and file a petition and you can file a petition either, number one, to have the judge make a ruling on the specific question, should the house be listed for sale or not, and when, or you can file a petition to have that person replaced because they're not doing their job. But their job was to liquidate the assets and to pay the funds to all the beneficiaries, not use the asset for one beneficiary.
Now, would it have helped if the person who made out the will said, if the house is sold, it needs to be done in a timely basis within a period of time?
Yes, but wouldn't be in favor of a specific period of time, because we've just gone through a time where prices were way down, and
Yes.
there's just no value.
Well, so if somebody makes a decision based on the economy and for the good of everyone, would be different than using it for personal
Yes.
use.
Yeah, or moving their own child in.
Exactly.
Yeah, I've seen that happen before too.
Well, let's talk about problems in families.
Yeah.
And we talked a little bit earlier about siblings or family members and what causes problems. And sometimes, like I said, it's not about Aunt Kate's bowl. It's sometimes a problem of, regardless of the candlestick, there are going to be issues within the family. I'm sure you have a lot of stories about that also.
Well, several years ago, I had a case where I had represented the mother and drawn up the will for her, and we just used a standard provision that all the personal property would be divided up among the 4 children. But when she died, and the one daughter who was named personal representative came to see me, she said, there's going to be a problem because we don't get along. And so in anticipation of that, I took the unusual step of having an estate sale set up and have the person who's going to run the estate sale appraise all the items, and then brought in the 4 children and told them, you can select, we're going to go, take turns and go around the table and pick the items that you want, and the value will be deducted from what you're going to get from the sale of the house and from the CDs and that. And so we're going to start with, and I started with the sister who I told would be cantankerous, and she says, no, I'm not going first. Well, why aren't you going first? She said, because if I go first, my sister will pick what I want just so that I don't get it. And I said, no, if you pick it, you get it. But, predictably, the sisters knew that there was going to be problems. After we were done, I pulled her aside and I said, what did you do to her in high school? Did you steal her boyfriend, or did you wear her yellow sweater and get it dirty? But, these people were in their 50s and they still didn't get along. And so, that, as an attorney, and I'm drafting documents, that's something I'd like to know from the mom and dad, that the kids don't get along. I had another case, if I can
Sure.
tell you, where I was drawing the document. It was a trust rather than a will, because we were avoiding probate, but to name the trustee, and the mom said, I want to name my son and my daughter as co-trustees. And my first question was, well, how did they get along? And she said, oh, well, they haven't spoken in 5 years, but this will bring them back together. This will be the thing that brings them back together.
Bad idea.
Bad idea. The mom was one of those folks who had lived in Detroit all of her life, had a house there for 40 years. And when she died, the house was appraised at $90,000. The brother and the sister fought over everything, whether to paint the house, how to get stuff out of the house, how to fix it up, who to list it with. It took them 4 years to sell it, and they sold it for $10,000. Because that's how much the market had fallen.
With family problems, we don't always run into just family problems. What happens when a parent passes away and then someone else and remarries? We were talking a little about listing things and putting names on the bottom of items. Tell us a little bit about what can happen there.
Well, one of the things that doesn't work, and I've seen this several times, and one case in particular, Mom was an antiques dealer, and so she had collected lots of antiques, which she had bought and sold. She also had a lot of antiques, figurines, Go-Bells from Germany, and those kinds of things. Hummels, yep. And so she had meticulously put a sticker on the bottom of each one as to who it was to go to. And so when she died, that's who that was to go to. Well, she had a will in which she left everything to her husband and then to her children, And while everyone thought Dad was going to die first because he was diabetic, he didn't. Mom got cancer and died first. And so Dad got everything, and then Dad remarried. And the new wife didn't collect antiques, and she said, we're having a garage sale, we're getting rid of all this stuff, and so all those, just pull the stickers off and sell it. So the children got nothing from their mother because it was all sold by the second wife.
Those are interesting things that you as an attorney probably need to know ahead of time. So do you bring up things when you're doing an estate plan? Do you bring up things to families like what happens now if Dad survives Mom?
Yes.
And so you look ahead and make suggestions.
Yeah, and that's always a thorny issue because that's always the possibility that there'll be a second marriage, even for people in their 70s.
Yes.
That there may be a possibility of a second marriage and a commingling of assets. And so that's a very tough discussion to have. And I hate to bring it up sometimes because the people will say, oh, I never thought about that. And the other one likely will say, well, yeah, I did. Because usually one thinks they're going before the other one.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, and so it's a hard discussion.
But a necessary discussion, I feel.
To plan for that.